Okay, can I just get a confirmation that folks can see the video in front of them?
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
I
you can
can
hear it.
see it.
You can see it.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for that. And if I can just ask everybody to kindly mute themselves and we will get this started. We've been on a growth trajectory for the last decade, opening more centers for men and families across the country, and then responding to the giant gap that our clients were telling us about in residential emergency support services for fathers and children that were leaving family violence situations or other kinds of crises. We decided to start opening up interim housing opportunities for those families. We were very proud to open first of its kind family shelter for fathers and children in crisis in Toronto just over 3 years ago. We are breaking news about to open the second of its kind, first in Western Canada, family shelter for fathers and children in crisis in Calgary later on fall of this year, 2024. And we want to keep expanding because those gaps exist all over the country and we need to be responsive wherever families are demanding essential support services.
Actually, I didn't know what to do with my life. I was thinking it's over, and I was treating cancer at the same time. I've been on cancer treatments for 3 years now.
So my kids have gone through so many trauma. It's not one or two, but so many that I cannot count. And they are so much resilient that I'm so proud of them. However, it does impact them. It does take out some of their life, and it does impact their future, what they could have been.
She told the police, my disabled son, I was slapping her, beating her up all the time. Then she said the children had come to her and said I was trying to teach the children how to smoke and do all sorts of things. I don't even smoke. I don't drink. And she came up to the court to make up all these kind of false allegations against me. And the family court, when you go there, they said, oh, all sorts of things, and the children has to be with the mother.
With regard to men's help seeking, there are a few barriers in place that often make it difficult for them. First of all, there is the stigma that many men feel that they cannot reach out for help or that they need to solve their problems on their own. But there is also the belief that there are no services available for them, or that the services, worse off, will actually kind of victim blame and blame them for their own problems. So one of the things that I find really important about CCMF is that, we really seek to challenge a lot of these stigmas and problems and portray seeking help as a strength rather than a weakness. So, we strive to provide men with supports that really emphasize their strengths and focus on dignity and treating them with the respect that they deserve.
But I have to deal with that on my own with the police. And then they gave me the address of the men's and family shelter because they know I was homeless presently. Having this place to live has given me hope in life. I was already hopeless. I was thinking there was no even reason to believe it again until I found here, Really, so they have really helped me. Food, everything, Yeah. I'm happy to be here. If not for here, I don't know what would have been my situation right now. Yeah. I'm really grateful to men's and family. Thank you.
Canadian Center for Men and Family. They were the game changer. They saved my life. At that time, I was so depressed, and I didn't even know where or how life was going to be for me. And they helped me so much. They even gave me another room to bring my son in for us to get ourselves, back together. Life is better now.
We're also very interested in reducing the staggeringly high rates of male suicide. We're interested in empowering fathers, both in intact families, but especially in separated and divorced families, where it can be very hard for a father to maintain a strong, healthy relationship with his children. And we're also getting into the area of providing support to younger males, boys and young men who are at risk of so-called failure to launch and need coaching and other methods of mentorship to keep them choosing making positive decisions, healthy decisions for them and their future families.
I think that a lot of people have been talking for a while now about things that are needed for men in our societies to really thrive and do better. But, what I really like about CCMF is that they're actually doing it. They're actually building the services. They're achieving the things that few people have been able to achieve. We started off as a very small community with one small office in Toronto, and over the course of the last 10 years, we've managed to build offices in the surrounding communities in Ontario, and then in Alberta, and then in BC, and then we built the shelter in Toronto, which was extremely exciting. And now we are just on the cusp of opening the shelter in Alberta, and it's extremely exciting to think of just how far we've been able to come in these 10 years despite the opposition, and to think of what we would be able to achieve in the next 10 years with more support from the community and from the government and everybody else that we can get that support from.
It's always difficult for any new charity to establish itself, but when your particular focus is on boys and men, you have to overcome a great deal of misunderstanding and sometimes opposition, frankly, to what you're trying to do, even though you have a very positive and collaborative message. And we have emerged against all those odds to become the leading voice to empower boys and men to be integrated into all of our efforts to solve social problems. So we're very proud of that. Nevertheless, there's much work that remains to be done. So whether you're looking for support for yourself or a loved one, or you're looking to give something back by supporting other families in need, please visit our website today. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Okay, so thanks everybody for your attention. I hope you got something out of that. That video is available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@menandfamily. So you can go and watch it as many times as you like. But with that, we're going to hear from a few of the people in this room, and we're going to start with Mark Osterberry, one of the longest serving board members of CCMF, or CAFE as it was known when Mark joined. Mark, it's all yours.
Okay, so it was 2012. So over 14 years ago, I think it was March 2012, I was at the University of Toronto and I saw a poster on the poster boards at the university advertising an upcoming talk from Barbara Kay. Now, at the time, I was going through a very acrimonious divorce, and I can tell you that family courts, especially here in Ontario, aren't father friendly. And I was happy to read articles from newspaper columnist Barbara Kay about the positive role men play in their children's lives, fathers play in their children's lives. And so it was such a pleasure to go see her live in person. Barbara Kay, being a national columnist, she's a mother and grandmother. And so that was my introduction to what was then called Canadian Association for Equality. I put my name down on the sign-up list and was contacted soon after by Justin Trottier, and invited to join the group, which I did. And after that, we didn't have any space to call our own, so we were just meeting in empty classrooms at the university. Find an empty classroom, and that's where we would hold our meeting. And we would raise funds by just collecting for some of our events, collecting an admission, $5, whatever you could pay admission to our events. It's enough to pay for the website at the time, and but we had a goal of getting our own space, which 2 years later we did. Later in 2012, we held a meeting where we elected our first directors. And so I was one of the first directors. I was elected at the first director meeting, and I've held a board of director position ever since 2012. So for 12 years. So the chair of our board of directors right now is Edward Sullivan, and I remember seeing him at the very first meeting we went to, and then Edward took a hiatus from the organization for a few years to get his law degree, and then once that was done, he rejoined us again. And so Edward and Justin and I have been around since close to the beginning of the organization. And so 2012, then we made the goal of getting our own space, and we looked for some affordable office space in Toronto. In 2014, we found our own space and established our own office space and established the Canadian Centre for Men and Families, where we would meet there from then on, and we held, we would have started things such as men's peer support group meetings, SOFA, survivors of false allegation meetings, personal counseling. So it just became a hub for meetings and lectures and guidance for men as they needed it. And so that was like an office space. And so then we set a goal of buying a house in Toronto and to act as a shelter, since there were many shelters for women with children across the country. There were none specifically aimed at men with children, not one across the country for men with children. So we set a fundraising goal. We had some generous people make some generous donations. We raised enough to put a down payment on a house in Toronto. And in 2020, we bought a 3-story house in Toronto, which you just saw in the video Justin played. And I tell you, this house was an amazing find. It's a 3-story house plus a full basement. So it's a full 4-level building. I think it had like 9 bedrooms. I think 3 of them were using as office space. So 6 bedrooms we made into living spaces. And I always say to people, it's a 3-story house plus a full basement. Guess how many bathrooms there are? And I'll get people say like 1 or 2, and I'll say there are 11 bathrooms in this 3-story house. Like nearly every bedroom in the house has its own private ensuite bathroom. So what a great feature that is, having a father become temporarily homeless with his children. There's like a bed and bunk beds for the kids in a 1 bedroom, and they have their own private ensuite bathroom. What a great feature that is. 2 full kitchens. So it's really a great place. It was an amazing find, and it was a great place for opening a shelter in Canada. And then here it is, 4 years later, we bought property in Calgary, Alberta. Even bigger property, 2-story, 11-unit apartment building, and we plan on, and it's well on its way to opening up as a shelter for men with children in Canada. So an even bigger accomplishment. And so we hope to keep spreading this across Canada, and we hope that our success leads to more success. And it's just amazing how 12 years ago we went from meeting in empty classrooms at the University of Toronto to having 2 shelters in the country with plans to open more. And so it's great to see everyone here, and it's great to think about all the things to come that we can accomplish when working together. So, all right.
Okay, thanks so much, Mark. I'm just going to take you off the spotlight there. Actually, you know what I'll do is I'm going to give it to Paul Sandor. So Paul, I think, joined the board shortly after Mark and is among our longest serving board members. Let's move over to Paul. Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to a full room of people interested in men and their plight. I joined the board in 2016, but the story begins quite a while earlier. Eleanor, my wife, is sitting next to me, and she was the one who made me aware of the fact that men can also have problems. I knew it from my own personal experience, having been through a somewhat difficult divorce, but she joined initially the group called FACT, Fathers Are Capable Too. Then later on, she discovered what became CCMF. And it was through her activities. She has worked as a volunteer, donating her time, providing counseling pro bono for our members from the very early days of, in the early teens, before even there was a board. In any case, through her, I came to observe the workings of the early board. And later on, I was invited to join in, which I happily accepted because I was inspired by the small group of people who made things happen and made things happen against quite considerable opposition in those early days. There were counter demonstrations, for example, when we provided some educational events at the University of Toronto in those days. And it was very exciting to be part of a startup. This was such a small operation that tried to do so many things for so many people. So there was the educational component, providing public lectures, developing legal arguments, and trying to alter the legislation that was somewhat biased against, considerably biased against men in family court, for example. We worked with this small group to develop better governance. We now have a very solid organization with clear rules and clear hierarchy, where a small number of people can accomplish a great deal. The disaster of COVID, like for many other organizations, first made it very difficult to provide services that we initially, in the first years, provided in person. However, we quickly developed the ability to deliver them online, and as all of you probably know, we have in fact multiplied our capacity and our reach, because now we are essentially delivering services across the country since they're available online. Mark already talked about many other aspects of the rapid growth and expansion of our organization. And I certainly am hopeful that with the support of the group such as the one that is present here today, we are going to go on to greater and better things in the future. So thank you for being here, and thank you for supporting the cause of men and families.
Yes, we don't want to forget the full name. Thanks so much, Paul. All right, so next up is a real pleasure to introduce Denise Fong, because Denise is a member of the founding family of CCMF, and she's also a member of my family, and that she's my wife. So it's great to introduce her and to bring her back into this event. And I'm just looking for her. There she is. All right, Denise, it's all yours. Go for it.
Hi, everyone. I'm also very happy to be here to be able to speak to you for the first time, I think, about the past of the CCMF history, the background, kind of like a little bit, very little bit about how it came to be, particularly from the beginnings when I first joined in 2012. So it's been 12 plus years, and I was there in the beginning as a board member for several years, and then I took a break and actually did a whole set of other degrees, and now I've come full circle, and now I am assuming a role of psychotherapist at the center and hoping to be able to help many of the men and families there at the Center for Men and Families shelter space. And yeah, I'm really happy now to be able to continue to be part of the work that's being done at the center. If I could really like place a word on how it was in the beginning, I can't emphasize more what Paul was saying, in that as a startup, it was really, really exciting and really fun. There was a lot that had not been done before, that had never been tried, that was unprecedented, that was really new and, you know, controversial at times. And I mean, not to the supporters, not to the people who were leading the cause, but to a lot of people like that may not have had maybe some of the personal experiences that either I or some of the supporters, members have faced. But you know, we had very, very strong leaders at the start, and we had very strong organization from okay, so Justin didn't want me to mention his name at all, but I can't help to say that it was really this like we never talked about the past before. We just kept driving. And this is because of Justin. It's always pushing to do more and more things. And that's something that I've never seen to this extent in my life before in anybody. Like, to see it firsthand was really something special and amazing and exciting. And yeah, we've come really, like, we really made a big change from the start of being like for a cause and doing events and lectures and speakers, inviting people to come into the university to speak. We didn't have a center for social services yet. We really made a change to this direction. We were able to influence and make societal change slowly that way. But it was really through the social services, it was really through directly helping clients that we've changed even more minds and brought men and families more into focus for governments, for other social service agencies, for the society as a whole. But I do miss that exciting first start, like when we were really just meeting at the library and, you know, where Mark was, you know, saying, okay, this room's open or that room's open. We were just there, not really sure. At least I was not really sure that this would really be something that could really move people, because there were a lot of people who were very against what we were doing and very, as you know, there were protests in the beginning. I actually met Justin at one of them. I didn't even know what protest was going on. We were on our very first date, and he had to rush to the university in between times that we were meeting, and I had no idea what this protest was about. And then I learned more and more, and just based off my own experiences, I learned that this is something I really, really care about. And yeah, so back in the day, it was more really about the events and more about communications, public relations, trying to build the support. As a communications major, I did some of that. I helped with that part a little bit with, I don't know, press releases, communication, social media, event planning. But yeah, that was really fun, I think, at first, and also not. at the same time, because it just felt like there was so much backlash, like so much to be up against at the same time. But we really felt strongly about our position. We really felt strongly. We really cared about the people that were kind of falling through the cracks and not being helped in a way that they deserved. So yeah, there's so much I can't put into like 5 minutes, like about what happened and how we got to where we're at the Center for Men and Families. Okay, highlights from events. I remember going with Justin to the Senate on behalf of the team at CCMF this was CAFE back then, to help influence people about the missing and murdered Indigenous men, because the focus was on missing and murdered Indigenous women. But you know, there was many more men who were missing and murdered, and that was not the focus. But we just wanted to be open, wanted to help people become more open to that fact. And what else? I think, yeah, there's just too much to discuss. I think one day a book has to be written about all of what's happened, and it would be something that would be really, really fun to read, I think. I've been so happy to be able to meet the number of characters that I've met through the organization. I've never met so many people. I never imagined I could meet that many people in my life, like in such a short period of time. And that was during the old days when, you know, there were so many speakers, so many supporters, actually, people who really shared our vision of what could be in the social services side of the Center for Men and Families. And now I'm really glad to continue to be part of that team at the center, and continue with supervisors at the center in my role as a psychotherapist. That's all I'm gonna say for now.
Thank you so much, Denise. And those are very kind words that you shared. So I didn't put her up to that, but I still appreciate the sentiment very much. Okay, just before we go to our next presenters, I am going to remind everybody that we're doing a year-end fundraiser, and some of what's necessary to kind of fuel that expansion is funds. It's money. It does help us pay the bills. So we're doing a matching campaign up until the end of the year, but we've had permission from the 3 donors who are doing the match and who are, some of whom are here tonight joining us at this meeting. We are going to do a quadrupling. So tonight, during this event and until midnight tonight, if you make a donation, we're going to match it ×4. But then on into the end of the year, we'll continue to do the doubling up until midnight on December 31st. So I'll put a link into the chat bar and just encourage all of you to please renew your commitment so the next 10 years can be even greater and more impactful than the last 10 years have been. And with that, we're going to move along, and I'm going to introduce Bijan Rafi, who is the Executive Director of CCMF York Region. Floor is yours, Bijan.
Thank you, Justin. Good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So good to see everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here and celebrate the 10th anniversary of CCMF. In fact, this is also our 5th anniversary of opening in the York region. That's we could say it's a double celebration of some sort. It's been a real honor to have been here in the past 5 years and witnessing this agency grow and become such an important resource for many men and their families across Canada. I particularly like to acknowledge the establishment of the shelter, Toronto Shelter in 2021, and also congratulate Bill Vance and our Calgary team, Justin, our donors and volunteers who did incredible work to open the shelter in Calgary as well. I still remember walking to CCMF at the Carton Street office in April 2029 in Toronto to listen to a press conference given by Dr. Alexandra Lysova about her seminal work on domestic violence using the latest Statistics Canada data to highlight the prevalence of domestic violence in the male population. That visit led me to become aware of the need for better mental health support for men in the York region where I live. And in July of that year, the board of directors of CCMF accepted a proposal to open a branch in York region. In December of that year, we actually held our first counseling session in a donated space in our local church. Since then, we have supported over 1,000 clients, many of whom desperately needed mental health support, which was not available to them elsewhere. Since our opening, we have actually networked with many major agencies in the region who now trust us with referring their clients. Many of those referrals have been actually included their own staff and their own family members, and that's been really, really heartwarming for us, and we found very strong allies in the York region. We have raised awareness by creating and delivering many training sessions for frontline social services and mental health workers to create better awareness and also help them to better support the male victim of intimate partner violence. During this time, we have gained very strong allies towards our goal to bring positive change. I especially would like to acknowledge Dr. Susan Chong, and she's here, for her work in creating the Men and Families Alliance, led international academic conference, and for her scholarship in this area as well. That's been a real game changer, I think, and CCMF has been one of the main sponsors of that conference as well. We have worked closely with other researchers, Drs. Lysova and Hines, to shed light on some of the crucial issues our clients face, and the results of this research has been game-changing as well. As part of the various tables in the region, we have partnered with other agencies to support many residents in the York region. I would like to commend all the staff, board members, volunteers, and many of our donors who have made CCMF successful. I would like to especially acknowledge our own staff, practicum students and volunteers and donors without whose work we would not be here. Lastly, I also like to mention that none of our work would have been possible if CCMF was not founded 10 years ago. In that regard, I would like to acknowledge Justin's vision and dedication for making CCMF happen 10 years ago. I have had the privilege of working with Justin closely in the past 5 years and always have been really impressed with his capability, determination, and how much he cares to bring positive impact in the society. Thank you very much, and I'll stop here.
Thanks so much, Bijan. We're going to move along. Actually, if Susan Chung is still with us, I know she had to bow out early.
Here.
There, you are
Thanks,
still there.
Bijan,
Okay,
appreciate
great.
that.
That is a nice intro to you as well, Susan. So I'm going to introduce Susan. This is not really planned for, but Susan, are you okay to say a few words?
I guess so.
There we go. You got the spotlight.
Okay, well, hi, everybody. I'm Susan Chuang from the University of Guelph. I'm a researcher. I met Bijan in December 2020, and from that meeting, it has changed my whole research agenda. I now am committed to working and partnering strongly with CCMF, and thank you, Justin, for your support as we collectively work together in the space of men and families. So some of you know me through through our conferences on men and families, and which is going to be in Barbados in 2025, a little plug, and in the Azores in Portugal in 2026. So if you're interested in coming or presenting or working with me, I'm open to collaborations. Please feel free to reach out to me. But, the work that Justin has been doing and the team, has been amazing. I've talked with many men who have really seen CCMF as a lifesaver, right? They've searched the net looking for places to, talk, with somebody who understands their situation, and CCMF is there to help them. So I'm honored to be partnered with them. Honored that Justin and CCMF have been partnering with me, and I hope that we go after big grants. And that's why I'm busy. There's another grant that just came out, and my eyes are on it. So thank you, everybody.
Not to mention that book that you're working on, all about these issues.
Oh yeah, and there's a book. We have a book series. So if you're interested in editing a book, Springer International has now contracted a book series for us on men, families, and society. So it's very exciting.
Indeed. Thanks, Susanette. Thanks for handling that so deftly on short notice. Okay, we're going to go to Carol Metz-Murray if she is ready to go. Find you there, Carol.
Thank you, Justin, and welcome everyone. What is in 10 years? I am a new kid on the block. I came to CCMF in the middle of 2022. I am a survivor of extreme intimate partner violence. I am also an individual who has spent over 18 years in the anti-violence field. And it was during that time that I saw the need for services for men and families. It was just very clear that men and families were being ignored while women and children were getting services. And quite frankly, we need services for both women and men so that children do not repeat the cycle of violence. And so in my work with CCMF, I do outreach, I do advocacy, I build relationships to, in essence, pave the way for projects to move forward, such as the interim housing facility in Calgary. CCMF and Justin's vision and the board's vision, together with staff and volunteers and all of the donors, have made the impossible possible. And I say from the bottom of my heart, thank you to everyone who has contributed, whether it's funds, expertise, knowledge, time, resources, because it does take a village to make change. And I am excited to say that change is actually happening very slowly. It's tiny, tiny baby steps, but stereotypes are beginning to break and barriers are beginning to melt. And more people are talking about the need for services for men and families. So as CCMF moves forward, I remind all of us to remember everyone who has built CCMF in the first 10 years and the work that they have done by engaging communities, governments, other not-for-profits, men and women, everybody with a focus and a desire to see services for men and families. As CCMF moves forward, I encourage it to celebrate its successes on a more regular basis, because there are successes. And it does take time, but it's also important to stop and smell the roses from time to time. As CCMF does move forward, and it will continue to move forward over the next 5 years, I see an additional 2 interim housing facilities, one in BC. I see another one in Ontario. I also see an expansion of the virtual services that have been put in place in Ontario and Alberta and BC, taking some of those services and actually creating the opportunity for in-person services with staff, because connection Although it happens on Zoom, and that is absolutely wonderful as we are here tonight, that in-person connection is also important. So thank you, Justin and board and volunteers and staff and donors for a job well done. And here is to the next 5 years, to the next 10 years. Thank you, Justin.
Oh, thank you, Carol. And I appreciate your ambition and your vision. And you are a good fit with CCMF's passion as well. And then we're going to go next to Bill Fitzsimmons, who is our Alberta Executive Director. Bill, you're up now.
Good evening, everyone. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk. I am the newest kid on the block in spite of not looking like I'm a new kid at all. But the fact is that I was originally brought into this work by my wife, who went out looking to see what kind of supports were available for men. And it was more a journey of curiosity than anything else. She connected with CCMF after a struggle to find anything that supported men, as you can imagine. And we connected with Beth Barbary, the CCMF executive director at that time, and I got informally involved with Beth, which eventually led to me being in this role. But the thing about my journey through CCMF is when I was 14 years old, my older brother, his girlfriend was pregnant. He entered into marriage with her. It was a toxic relationship. It yielded 3 beautiful little girls and an enormous amount of hurt. We talk about intergenerational trauma. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen the impact of, I lost a childhood friend as a young father and a young man to suicide. Myself, I've had male depression symptoms, and I've been through the situation of having different aspects of my life just pile up and not really understanding as a man that it would have been okay to go out and seek help for that, but believing that you tough it out, you soldier on, stiff upper lip, all those different messages that we've had as men. So that's my background that I bring to this work. But at the same time, I really have to pay a lot of credit to individuals that came before me. Of course, we've mentioned Justin and his incredible drive, the various board members that have spoken up from the early days nationally. Here in Alberta, some tremendous committed volunteers from Tanis, who you saw on the video, but Dr. Dan McKinnon and his wife, who loaned the group in Calgary space in their counseling office and provided counseling services. Sean McMurtry out of Edmonton, who was a board member and a driving force. So many committed volunteers in Alberta over the years. I can't name them all, but that's what it takes to create something of this magnitude. And Justin asked me to talk a little bit about the history of CCMF in Alberta. 2016 was when we started in that office space, Dr. Dan McKinnon. In 2019, Calgary and an Edmonton group merged to actually form CCMF Alberta. In 2020, we opened an office location, also hired Beth Barbary as the executive director at that time. And that really was the genesis of a lot of growth and development. In 2022, we had the first annual Footsteps for Father's Day event to celebrate fathers and fatherhood. In 2023, we repeated that event. We also started an International Men's Day event to acknowledge male suicide and bring a spotlight onto some of those issues. We also got funding for a Triple P parenting program, which is an internationally recognized standard, and we've already presented one cohort of Triple P Parenting. That's the Positive Parenting Program, for those of you who are not familiar with it. In 2024, we've expanded our capacity in MPSG with additional facilitators. We have an additional counselor and a counseling program. So, probably the highlight of this year was the opening of our interim housing facility. We chose International Men's Day, November 19th, for that launch. So we currently have 3 studio apartment units within the facility that are ready to go. 2 of them are already occupied with fathers with families with them, a couple of kids each. The 3rd unit, we're just doing a few finishing touches of cleaning, but it's essentially ready for a family, and we have some referrals and inquiries around that unit. We're still finishing off our office space, but an incredibly exciting initiative, and full marks to Justin and his team at National, because they really have driven this housing program, driven the fundraising, and it's paying dividends for us as CCMF Alberta in terms of our credibility as an organization with other agencies. Justin asked me to comment a little bit on what does it take to build a strong branch. And again, those committed, passionate volunteers are really the key. If you don't have a group of committed and passionate volunteers that are willing to make a commitment, such as you've seen from some of the people who have spoken, you're not going to get anywhere. At some point in time, though, those volunteers need to be supplemented by staffing, because there are mission critical tasks that, as you grow as an organization, you can't manage just with volunteers, because volunteers have their own lives, they have their own jobs, and we're dealing with men in crisis, and we have to be there for them when they need our services, not when we can kind of fit it in. So at some point, you need to start building staff resources, but balancing it with that continued commitment of volunteers, because that's the glue that keeps holding it together. And I think the other thing that we've done at CCMF Alberta and CCMF in general is brought in specialty expertise. We're evidence-based. We bring in advisors who have knowledge of the different areas we work in. We make sure we've got credible programs that not only can we be proud of, but that our agency partners can see are based in solid foundations. Funding's critical to grow. The places where we've had success, I would say, is a combination of individual donors and monthly contributors that have created a base of financial support, because there's so many costs that you don't see. Zoom platforms, databases, computers, even beyond the staffing. There's a lot of costs to support the counseling program. Grants and foundation support has been important to us, but it's a difficult climb, because very few foundations recognize men as a group in need. We're not recognized as men as at risk as a group, and that's changing slowly, as Carol said, but it's still got a long ways to go. Corporate support is the other key that's been helpful for us, usually through personal connections and relationships is where that corporate support comes from. Often individuals who've had life experience and have come to CCMF for that reason. So, is there a secret formula? No, absolutely not. It's just hard work, passionate, committed individuals, and I think a vision of the organization that's strong and clear, and the element of fairness and equity, I think, can't be understated, and it's such a difficult road to travel. So it's such a narrow path at times. A lot of my experience in volunteering until I came to CCMF was championing women's groups, the Women in Need Society, a couple of other groups that help rescue women from the sex trade. I don't see a contradiction of any kind in having come from supporting women's initiatives and supporting equality for women to suddenly be working with men, because there are gaps in services for men. There are areas in which men are disadvantaged, either as individuals or as a group. So at the end of the day, it's not about men or women. It's about somehow getting beyond that dichotomy to, recognizing that fairness for individual human beings and compassion for individual human beings is where we want to get to. So I think I'm going to stop there, Justin, because I don't want to go on too long, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bill. And thanks for touching on so many critical themes. Just before we go to a couple of sort of last minute additions, since Bill did prime us with some fundraising appeals there, I just wanted to note that I put a link into the chat. So, and again, until the stroke of midnight, it is a 4 times match, and then the doubling itself will continue until the end of the year. I want to remind everybody, as we've been communicating in our various messages, we're entering in a federal election year in 2025. There will be an election by, I think, October of 2025, if not before. We want to be active in this. We're not partisan, but we want to be educating politicians of all stripes. In fact, we're actually building the first Men and Boys federal caucus within the House of Commons. There are politicians of all parties that have signed on to be a part of this groundbreaking Men and Boys caucus. That's huge. And through that, we think that we can be a player in platform building, and then in terms of the actual, the debates and all of the other events that happen around the election. But we do need funding to do that, obviously. So again, please go to that link and make a generous donation tonight or before the end of the year. So the last minute additions, we have 2 individuals who are very involved in running some of the essential programs. I'm going to go to Anthony first. Sorry. Bill, I'll get the spotlight off of you, and I will give it over to Anthony Alexopoulos, who is one of the members of our growing men's peer support group, and not just running individual meetings, but has also taken on a role with a couple of other men to just kind of self-organize this team of almost a band of brothers of facilitators that work together to run these essential programs. So Anthony, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Justin. Thanks for the invitation to speak. Hi everyone. My name is Anthony Alexopoulos. I originally found CCMF as a client, as a single father, going through some struggles and experiencing parental alienation and false accusations, and that was in early about 2019. And since then, I've been able to take advantage of some of the great programs and resources that CCMF has to offer. I got really involved, and you know what? I felt that getting involved in something that I care greatly about, that I feel that helped me so much, I wanted to volunteer, and so now I'm currently volunteering with CCMF York Region. I work closely with Bijan and Justin and Mark as well. I'm very thankful during that time to have met a leadership team like this that has been able to guide me and mentor me to expand and help other men. I'm currently running the MPSG Men's Peer Support Group. We started in I believe 2022 or late 2021. It's been a great experience. I've got to meet so many men that have gone through struggles, and we've created such a good community. We really see where we're making a difference. We have some of the guys here tonight. I want to say hi to them. I appreciate being here. Congratulations on everyone for the 10-year anniversary. The past 4 or 5 years for me has been great, and looking forward to the future and helping out wherever I can. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Anthony, and sorry for the lack of a heads up on that. Also, sorry to Jill Hendry, who is our next speaker and the last to go before we turn things to our keynote, Cassie Jaye. So Jill is actually a board member, has been a board member for quite a number of years, and is the secretary of the board. So she can comment on that, obviously. But I also was hoping that she would speak to one of our sort of flagship programs. It's a very unique program called Survivors of False Allegations, which Jill helped us to build and found, and has been facilitating it ever since. And with that, I'm going to spotlight Jill Hendry.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here, and it's great to see so many people showing up for our very important 10th anniversary. It's quite a milestone for CCMF. Anyway, my name is Jill, and I've been volunteering with CCMF, goodness, I think since 2017. And one of the sort of, aside from serving on the board, one of the things that I stepped up to do was to volunteer my time for the SOFA group. I was among the first 4 volunteers to formulate the group and to get it launched and get it off the ground. We used to hold our meetings out at the office down on College Street. And then once COVID hit, we went online, and it's actually, and that was very beneficial for the program, because it actually did start to expand quite a bit, because originally people had to come down to the center to participate, but when we went online, it was available to everyone right across the country from all time zones. So that was very beneficial for the program. And so basically what the program is it's an opportunity for men in particular who find themselves in the situation, who are being falsely accused. Most of them are fathers who are going through acrimonious divorces and separations, and they're having they've got sort of a double barrel, because they're going through family court, which can be very treacherous for men, and certainly not supportive for men, and also in some cases they're also dealing with criminal court, because they have these allegations that are leveled against them, usually from their partner, their ex-partners, and so they've got both sets of courts to deal with. And so the group is here basically for them to come and talk about their situations, discuss the circumstances with other members of SOFA who are generally in the same sort of set of circumstances, and through the process, they develop ideas, and they listen to the other people who are, at various stages. Some have successfully come out on the positive at the other end, and they're always happy to share, to let these men know what their journey was like, and how they were able to come out on the positive end and, achieve their goals. And that's very helpful for them, because it helps, get them some ideas of how to deal with the family court and criminal court and the different steps that they need to take. And so, it's a very beneficial group. And it's, the one thing I always hear from the men is that, and actually, because we just had a group last night, is that how relieved they are that the group exists. And actually that they're very relieved that CCMF exists, because, when they go to search online, there's so little out there for men. I mean, there's basically nothing there. And CCMF is sort of like this sort of lone beacon for where they can go to find some sort of like-minded individuals who can help them and provide them with services and some guidance, and help them navigate, the various different instances of their lives. And just, for the group in particular, it sort of, one of the attendees last night said, he thought he was going crazy before he joined the group, because he thought, coming from an abusive marriage, that he was the only man that was going through something like that. And, through getting involved with CCMF and coming to the group, he realized that he isn't, that sort of situation affects quite a few men. And it was almost a bit of a relief, because it's sort of like, well, thank goodness I'm not the only one. And there's actually people out there who have empathy and are concerned about my well-being and are willing to step up and help me. And that's sort of a tremendous source, I think, of relief for a lot of them. So, although it's challenging for me to have to hear their stories, because I find it upsetting, and You know, I don't come from a social sciences background myself, so it's not like I can offer them a lot of guidance that way, but I can give them a place to talk, to speak, to, you know, express their concerns, and I can be there to listen. And, you know, and try and help them any way I can. If not, I'll point them off to another, you know, service that CCMF offers that might help them, you know, achieve their goals or resolve whatever they need to be resolved. And it's a pleasure to be able to do that because, you know, I've sat on the sidelines for a lot of years. And it wasn't really until I got involved with this organization that I realized just how bad things were. Because I think because, you know, in the media you always hear about, you know, women's needs and, you know, women's suffering, but you never hear about men's suffering. And, you know, it's sort of like it's something that our society just doesn't want to talk about or isn't aware. And it's nice to be part of an organization that's, you know, changing hearts and minds. And we've been trying to do this slowly but surely over 10 years. And it's, you know, it feels good to be part of an organization that's doing such important work. And it's going to be, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, what happens over the next 10 years and see where we are when we're celebrating our 20th anniversary and so forth. And, you know, that's something I certainly look forward to. So.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing how many more gray hairs I get over the next 10 years.
Well, I'm doing highlights.
Involved in this organization.
I'm trying to camouflage mine with highlights and everything, so.
A better job of that than I am, I think. All right, we are going to move along to Cassie Jaye, but I did want to say one thing. Jill has reminded me of how, you know, essential these programs, of course, are. And because of that, we've actually ramped up the men's peer support programs over the holidays. We just announced that in the last couple of days. But thanks to Anthony and Rod, and there's a tremendous group of men that again, as I said, kind of self-organize this without any sort of direction from national or anything. They just realize that the clients need that and the families need that, and they've come up with these with a schedule of around-the-clock support meetings. So those will happen all next week, as I understand it, the Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. If this can be a benefit to you folks or anybody, you know, in your network, please pass that word along. And we are going to pass along. We're going to go to Cassie Jaye now, who probably needs no introduction for any of you, but I'm going to give her one anyway. So Cassie, we got to know a number of years ago when she came out with the Red Pill, the acclaimed Men's Issues 2016 feature documentary that covered men's rights, men's issues, and how all of that intersected with sort of feminism and human rights and civil liberties in a more kind of general way. But before that, she cut her teeth as a filmmaker, providing documentaries or producing documentaries, more looking at feminism and issues to do with women and girls. She directed the documentaries Daddy, I Do and The Right to Love an American Family. And she's a recipient of numerous Best Documentary Awards for her work. Through her work specifically on the Red Pill, she came to believe that what we need is to bring men and women together and address these issues in a more sort of holistic and balanced way. And then we got to know her, of course, at our 2019 conference, where she did a keynote address at that time and has stayed connected to the organization ever since, and has so kindly agreed to now be a part of the 10-year celebration, which is, I think, quite appropriate to bring you back today, Cassie. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction. It truly is an honor to be here today with all of you, especially as we celebrate this remarkable milestone, the 10th anniversary of the Canadian Centre for Men and Families. I want to start by acknowledging the incredible work that CCMF has been doing for the past decade. This organization has been a beacon of support for men and their families who have been going through incredible difficulties. The impact that CCMF has had is immeasurable and continues to grow with each passing year, especially given the many lives that they've saved and inspired hope in. So CCMF's services, including therapy and counseling, peer support groups, legal guidance, family mediation, and providing a safe refuge for victims of domestic violence. All of these services are astonishingly groundbreaking for the times that we're living in. And CCMF and all of their volunteers are pioneers in this work. Running and operating a nonprofit is extremely hard to do, even when you have the culture's awareness of the issues and compassion and motivation for change. But when a nonprofit is supporting victims that the widespread cultural narrative doesn't acknowledge or even believe, it is massively an uphill battle. What I find so admirable about CCMF and the people who have made it what it is that at their core, I believe they are driven by two things: truth and love. And I can't think of anything more honorable than that. So I want to thank the Canadian Centre for Men and Families, the volunteers, the donors, and everyone who supports them in any way. And if everyone wasn't muted, I would say let's give them a round of applause. If I could do it miming if you want. So I feel so grateful that my independent work on the Red Pill documentary has aligned with CCMF's work, and our paths have crossed numerous times in support of each other, even though the origin stories of CCMF and my work on the Red Pill started nearly 3,000 miles apart with no knowledge of each other a decade ago. So a decade ago, I was filming the Red Pill documentary. And at that point, I had already directed and produced numerous films on women and girls and LGBTQ issues and other human rights issues like food insecurity, homelessness, poverty. I made a film about the HIV/AIDS epidemic in Swaziland, Africa, and the list goes on. But what made making the Red Pill documentary so different for me was that I was entering this film as an angry skeptic. To be honest, in the beginning, I was not going in with a humanitarian mission like I had been doing with my other films. I was going in essentially undercover because I was a staunch feminist filmmaker looking to expose what I believed was a misogynistic hate group. So now, if you've seen the Red Pill documentary or my TEDx talk called Meeting the Enemy, you know how my journey panned out. But basically, my strong-held ideological feminist beliefs were broken down and were broken wide open beyond repair because of the statistics I had heard and then investigated myself, the discriminatory laws I learned about, and the vast amount of firsthand stories I had heard that were heartbreaking and mind-boggling. One of those stories, gentlemen, I see is in the room right now. Hi, Fred. And the deep-seated oppression of compassion for men and boys that is impossible to ignore once you are open to seeing it. And then you realize it permeates every aspect of our society. So in short, my worldview was changed forever in a way that I'm grateful for, but also have been maligned for, which was really just further proof that when you speak up for men and boys, there will be attempts to silence or punish you. And so in some odd way, the response to the Red Pill documentary supported the very message of the film and validated the need for these conversations and growing awareness of men's issues. So now where the overlap with CCMF comes in is an amusing sequence of events that I'd like to share. So it happened in stages and it needs some backstory to explain. So I had filmed the Red Pill from 2013 to 2014. And then for about a year, I was in post-production limbo where I had all this amazing video footage captured, but I didn't have the funds to complete the film. And I was getting rejection letter after rejection letter from all the film grant organizations I had applied to. I also wasn't having any luck finding a private investor despite exhaustive efforts. And whenever I pitched the film to people, I was told, why would you give them a platform to speak? I also reached out to major publications that had supported my previous films and asked if they would share the trailer video I had made. And they told me that if I had shown these men's rights activists being violent, then they would share it. So in late 2015, after over a year of me struggling to find funding to complete the film, in a Hail Mary last-ditch effort, I decided to open a donation page on Kickstarter to crowdfund the film. I just posted up a teaser video to describe the film I wanted to make, and I explained my funding struggles, and then I pressed publish. And I really didn't think it was going to work out at all, given the pushback that I had already experienced. But long story short, it did. And within 30 days, over 2,000 people had donated money so that I could complete this film. It was astonishing and exciting. And then the excitement wore off and I realized, oh boy, okay, no excuses now. This is going to happen. I'm going to share with the world the journey I went on, which is extremely raw and uncomfortable and polarizing, and will most likely not be embraced by the people who have supported my previous films or by Hollywood or by the entertainment industry and the media. But here we go. So now, what I didn't know at the time was that some of the biggest crowdfunding donors were in some way connected with the Canadian Centre for Men and Family. And I had no way of knowing that, and I wouldn't know that until after the film was completed and released, which I'll get back to in a moment. So after the film was crowdfunded in late 2015, I was then in the thick of editing the film, and footage of two events became pivotal points in the film's edit. One was a CCMF event in Toronto where Dr. Warren Farrell was going to be speaking about boys' issues, and a group protested the event and became verbally and physically aggressive with the attendees and the security staff that were working there. And the other event was a CCMF event called From Misogyny and Misandry to Intersectional Dialogue, where Dr. Paul Nathanson and Dr. Catherine Young were speaking, and protesters pulled the fire alarm to shut down the event. So after I decided to include the footage of those events in the edit, I realized that I needed to get permission to use them. And so that was the very first time I contacted Justin Trottier. And Justin was incredibly gracious and supportive, giving me the rights to include that footage without hesitation. And a few months later, by October 2016, The Red Pill was finally finished and premiered in theaters. And then shortly after, Justin Trottier reached out to say that he had heard from multiple CCMF members saying that they were a donor to the Red Pill's crowdfunding campaign. And because of the generous amount that they had donated, their Kickstarter reward was a license to host a one-time screening of the Red Pill in their hometown. And they wanted to do that in partnership with CCMF. And thus began a long time, beautiful relationship between me and CCMF members hosting countless screenings of the Red Pill across Canada. And it's a funny thing because by design, I didn't know who the Kickstarter donors were or their affiliations. And they also have no say in how the film is made. Or the thing that they're funding. They have no say in it. So they didn't know if the film that I was making was going to support their views. And I didn't know that any CCMF members donated to the Kickstarter when I chose to include the CCMF events footage in the film. So our alignment was truly organic, and we both paved our own paths but ended up in the same place, which is understanding the need for men and boys' stories to be heard, acknowledged, and met with empathy, and a mission to better the lives of men and boys, and therefore everyone. And looking back, I can honestly say that CCMF played the single biggest role in helping the Red Pill become a household name in Canada. The screenings, the press, the conversations your screenings helped foster. It was through your hard work and commitment that the film found its Canadian audience and in turn sparked an important national dialogue about the challenges facing men and boys. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. Thank you to the CCMF members who took a chance on donating to my little film 10 years ago. And thank you to all the CCMF directors, board members, staff, volunteers, and donors. And I also want to thank every single person who has gone to CCMF for support. Because to take that step and admit that you and your families need help and to reach out for that help takes great courage. And sometimes that first step to seek help is the hardest step. So I want to acknowledge you and thank you for doing that for you, for doing that for your children, for your community that needs you, and for helping CCMF help you, and for helping them navigate their way to better serve men and families in need. So thank you all so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Thanks so much for that, Cassie, for those kind remarks. And I think that overlap or alignment between your approach and CCMF's is to do with the same priorities that we both have, which is the truth and the compassion to actually help people. And when you marry those two things together, you get, you know, your willingness to follow the truth wherever it leads. And I think it's also kind of at the heart of our approach as well as an organization, and it's actually enshrined in our statement of values. But with that, I would like to, open the floor to some questions to Cassie. And then we are going to, in a moment, kind of open things up to a discussion about CCMF's past, present, and future, and try to engage all of you in a robust conversation around that. But specifically for Cassie Jaye and the work that she's done. I see Bill with his hand. Go ahead, Bill.
Cassie, I have a confession to make. I just watched The Red Pill yesterday for the first time, but I was blown away. Not only by the journey that you took and the courage you showed in taking that journey and the vulnerability you displayed in that film in terms of the struggles you went through and the conflicts you experienced in coming to grips with really changing your perspective a little bit on the world and on men and women in particular. And I'm wondering, 8 years later, what your reflection is around both that journey that you took and how it's impacted the last 8 years for you.
Oh boy, that's a meaty first question. Can you ask, like, where are you living now? Like, oh boy. I mean, it's a complete shift of your worldview. I mean, of course, I'm still aware and compassionate about women and girls issues, but I do see that the narrative is so tilted in one way to the detriment of men and boys getting the services they need, or just empathy and compassion. And you know what, it's, even though the red pill term has kind of taken on a life of its own since the film, and honestly, I think that was very plotted and planned how how that happened. The red pill term wasn't as vilified when it came out in the film, and then you can actually see in the Google Analytics where the media really kind of took that term and ran with it and tried to affiliate it with some atrocious things, and now that's, it's taken on a life of its own. But the reason for the title The Red Pill, and why I chose that title over others, was because the initial term and symbolism of the red pill is from the Matrix, is really taking the scales off your eyes and seeing the world in a different way. And it's kind of a harsh reality that it's not comfortable. You're going to go, at least right now in society, you're going to go against the mainstream perspective, against the grain. And it does feel like an uphill battle to even get people to listen to these issues or care about them. Nevertheless, fund an organization that is trying to work on these issues. So yeah, it's almost like there's before the red pill life and then after the red pill life. I do feel like, it changed my whole view on the world. And in a lot of ways, it has improved my life as far as my relationship with my husband. So the film came out in 2016. By 2017, my husband proposed, and he was the director of photography on The Red Pill, but we'd been dating since 2011. So we'd already been together a few years while I was that staunch feminist, and he stuck by me, and then he stuck by me throughout the red pill, and then we got engaged and got married in 2018. And then now we have a 3-year-old son and a 1-year-old son. So I'm in the fog of early parenthood right now. But, you know, that's also something that I think was, you know, kind of divinely planned, was for me to have 2 boys. I always thought I was going to have girls. And so now here I'm, you know, doubling down as being in a house full of boys and men. So, you know, the stakes couldn't be higher for me regarding these issues. You know, when I made the red pill, it was kind of this, like, you know, when you have compassion for issues that you see across on the other side of the world, or like, you know, whales or dolphins or whatever, it's like there's kind of, you know, oh, you feel for them. And that was kind of my feeling about interviewing all these men in the red pill. Was it did feel a little bit separate for me, since I didn't have that walk in my own experience of being in their shoes, and having gone through what they were going through. I was, you know, still unmarried, no kids, and I'm a woman. And so, you know, it took a bit of imagining and a lot of empathy to really put myself in their shoes and think, okay, you know, what would that be like if you had your children taken away from you based on false accusations that you know, and so many things when it comes to domestic issues, it's very hard to prove. And personally for me, one of my biggest pet peeves is being accused of something I didn't do, or being put in a place to defend yourself that you absolutely know is just, what, you're a good person, and now you're wasting all this time trying to defend yourself against something that you know, you work your whole life at being a good person. And oddly enough, with the red pills release, you know, I was kind of pushed into that seat of having to defend myself, and I knew everything I did on the film was good, and like I was using good documentary filmmaker ethics, and, you know, but the media wanted to, well, they made false accusations about me. So anyways, this is why I had to write out my speech, because I can ramble. But yeah, I think, you know, now having 2 sons and being married, and you know, I think my filmmaking work will continue. I do plan on making more films, and that's my journey. Making the red pill is always going to inform not only the way I walk through the world, but in the work that I make in the future. And also, it's worth mentioning that the red pill came out on the brink of a lot of really big things that happened right after. It was the Me Too campaign, and Trump was elected the first time, and like, you know, it kind of it was released right before that tipping point in this you know, kind of well, blaming patriarchy and men for a lot of the ills of the world. And so it's, yeah, it's just a very interesting time. It's been the last 8 years. And I still get emails even now. And just yesterday, a man in Canada was asking where he can go for help, and I recommended CCMF. And you know, it's I'm so glad that this organization exists, especially because there's no one else I can really recommend. I'm getting all these people reaching out, needing help, and there's only, I can count on less than one hand how many places I can send them to, and it's also limited by their location as well. So I'm just so grateful for everyone doing the work they're doing here, and yeah, you all are truly heroes. So thank you.
That, Cassie. We have time for maybe 2 more questions for Cassie.
I have a quick question, if I could.
Well, we've got hands up, Simon, so we're going to go to those first, and then we'll circle back to you.
Fair enough.
Mark, then at this point, go ahead, Mark.
Well, first, Cassie, congratulations so much on having 2 little ones. Having 2 children myself, I can tell you it's a very special time in your life. becoming a parent and seeing little ones grow up. I'll give you my unique story about the Red Pill movie. I remember we hosted it in Toronto, and we had about 300 people come to see the movie. Did you get a screening with that many or more people?
Yeah, but I mean, 300, that's impressive. That's
Yeah.
very
So it was the day before we showed the film. I'm previewing the movie. I'm sitting down watching it. And as I'm sitting there, and you come up to the part, where, men have, you're talking about some of the disadvantages men have in life. And you mentioned, oh, men on average live 5 years shorter than women do. And right at that point, my phone starts flashing. I got an email. As I'm watching the movie, I look at my email, and it's a email message from an acquaintance who, another man we knew, had just died of a heart attack.
Wow.
So it was not a friend, not someone I knew well, but an acquaintance, someone I knew for a number of years. And he died suddenly. It was such a surprise because I think otherwise he was a healthy person, but he died suddenly of a heart attack, man in his 50s. And so, boy, you touched on issues that affect men, and right at that point, I was affected by it.
I'm so sorry. Wow. Wow, I can't even imagine how that must have hit you in that moment. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Not a close friend, just an acquaintance I knew. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing.
that's my Red Pill movie story.
Well,
Keep up the good work, Cassie.
thanks, Mark.
Okay, thanks for opening up about that. Appreciate it. We're going to go to Warren next, and then Simon will be over to you in just a minute.
Thank you, Justin.
Warren, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Cassie. I'm a volunteer in Vancouver with CCMF, so I just want to first thank you for making the film. It's kind of my go-to recommendation for anybody who's new to the topics and they want an intro to why we should care about men. So my question is, I have noticed since the film came out, I spend a lot of time online in the manosphere, especially on places like YouTube and Reddit, and I have noticed a really positive momentum in the number of content creators who are doing pro-male, healthy content creation, things to do with health and relationships and career and pushing back against misandry and things like this. And it is changing a lot of people's minds on an individual level. So I think that's good progress. But at the same time, a lot of the goals of the men's rights movement are to change unjust laws, things like having shared custody after divorce instead of defaulting to mother-only custody, and there's other discriminatory laws against men. But the politicians of all parties, left-wing, right-wing, centrist, it doesn't matter, in US and Canada and other countries, they seem very, very reluctant to engage on anything that looks like a pro-male political position. And it's very hard for us to change their minds and actually make differences where it's concretely needed. So do you have any thoughts or ideas about strategies on that, or things that you've noticed that are effective?
Oh, I completely hear the struggle in that, Warren. Thank you for a good question. I don't think I have the perfect solution right now, but I've definitely seen that issue as well, where it's a tricky thing where I entered making the Red Pill movie, seeking out this extremist group that has been written as a hate group in a lot of articles, and like Southern Poverty Law Center labeled them a hate group and everything. And so, but that was my draw into that world, was being curious about this triggering thing for me. And but then it's like, when you've seen the film, it's like it becomes like, okay, there's a wider, this can be you know, depending on who you ask, is this an extreme radical group? You know, that's debatable, but they're talking about a bigger societal, you know, filter that we're seeing gender politics through that doesn't really have the full picture, and really is harming men and boys in the process of this kind of the feminist ideology really being the dominant view to the point of not only just ignoring men and boys' issues, but also blaming them for women's issues. And so it's this, I mean, it's such a tricky thing. And you know, I've also seen a lot of people comment that, you know, not much has changed since the red pill has come out. I mean, I think it's kind of, it's more complicated than that. Like there has been a lot more awareness and discussions about men and boys issues, but then there's also been this counter backlash in response. And so it's just, everything's gotten more heightened and more electrified, I think, since the red pill came out. And so, yeah, when it comes to, I'm sorry, Warren, remind me.
How can we take this positive momentum that we're seeing at an individual grassroots level and kind of translate it to get the politicians to wake up?
Yeah, because everyone's afraid to, the politicians, you know, they just want the votes. So everyone's afraid to you know, plant their flag in that camp, saying, okay, we are going to be on the side of men and boys, because they're afraid of what that might mean for female interest groups or something. I don't know. I mean, what would be great is like the politicians who do plant their flag and being support of men and boys are really in the name of equality. And it doesn't mean at the expense of girls and women, but it's just in the name of fairness and equality and you know, caring for all people. I mean, that's the other thing is, you know, there's so much debate about, well, the numbers, how many women are affected by this more than men and that, but then when you look at LGBTQ issues, you know, that's a small percentage of the overall population. And there is a lot of, you know, draw to funding efforts for those issues or discussing those issues in media or politicians being open to talking about that. So I don't know why it's so hard for politicians to just be brave and be comfortable saying, no, we are also going to care about men and boys resources and services and support. And that is such a good question that I don't have the answer to, other than just I do know the struggle. It's, you know, yeah, I've seen it over a decade now, that it's an interesting thing, isn't it? How much pushback this topic still receives.
And Cassie, nobody has an answer to this, so you're not alone. we're all kind of working on that. I don't think there's anything simpler than building a mass mobilization of people, which is what we're in the business of doing, and just accepting it's going to take years or even decades to get there. But slow and steady wins the race. Thank you, Warren. And I should have said Warren is a member of our board as well. So we've got the boards well represented tonight. And he's also out of Vancouver and chairs the CCMF BC Regional Board. So thank you for representing BC, Warren. And I'm afraid Simon's going to get the last question, because there's a little bit more to the night and it is getting late. So thank you, Warren.
Yeah, thank you, Cassie. I saw the red pill about a year ago, and you know, the controversy preceded my seeing it. And when I saw it, I thought it was a great film, and thank you for doing it. I frankly couldn't understand why everybody was complaining about it, or it was so controversial, because it seemed like a totally reasonable documentary. Having said that, the question I'm so thrilled to be able to ask you is, you know, we've just had this American election, and I'm assuming we're talking to you from the United States. A lot of the analysis of the election, it was that Kamala Harris did not enjoy much support from women, because I was looking at something Anthony Scaramucci, you know, one of Trump's former very short-lived communications directors, said was that women were actually looking down at their boys and saying they didn't want to be marginalized by the woke agenda of perhaps the Democrats. I'm just wondering, you know, like it seems perfect to ask you this since you are the mother now of boys. What do you have any take on that?
Oh boy. I want to put my toe in that
Sorry to
hole.
put you on the spot so much.
Yeah. I mean, to be completely honest, I've just been, you know, I have a 1-year-old, and so it's, you know, I'm just I haven't really dug into the whole this past election politics that much out of kind of self-preservation for my sanity. So yeah, I don't, as far as women not showing up for Kamala, there's probably a lot of factors there. I'm not really sure what to point to, but I do know that a lot of people have felt that men and boys have just been dismissed and undermined, and yeah, I think that does have a lot to, and I think there's actually been a lot of articles written kind of dissecting that part of this past election about men and boys and who they voted for. So yeah, I don't know.
I guess I want to ask you who you voted for, but anyway.
I don't think I want to go on record.
It's a difficult question. I for sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, and thanks, Cassie. And yes, I did ask you all to mute yourself, so it's going to be hard for you to give her a round of applause. You can unmute, all right, for a couple of seconds, because I think Cassie deserves an unmute. Thank you so much.
Woo! Yay!
Awkward claps. Okay, there we go. Cassie, it's a real honor that you joined us today. And as I said, I think it was appropriate. You've been on not exactly the same journey, but a journey that's overlapped at some critical points in your history and our history. And it's meant a lot to us to have you to join us tonight. Okay, so with that, I'm going to say a few words myself, and then we're going to go to just a short conversation with those of you who are with us tonight, and I hope you will feel free, all of you, to share your own impressions of the organization, what it's meant to you, and also are interested not just in the past and the present, but also in the future and where the organization is going and should be going. But if I might take 5 minutes just to give you some of my own personal reflections as one of those who was involved in the founding of the organization way back. And to be fair, we kind of cheated a little bit. The organization's technically founded all the way back in 2010, but it didn't really get off the ground until 2012. And then the opening of the first Center for Men and Families, which really put us on the map, was fall of 2014. And so that's why we use fall of 2014 as kind of that marker, and we're celebrating 10 years of achievement since then. I thought it would be neat to sort of start by reading to you the original mission statement. This has gone through a few different iterations. This is the original mission statement we established for CCMF back 10 years ago, and I'd like to know what you think about how well we sort of accomplished that and stayed true to it. So it went, "No one's invincible. It's time he has a place for him and the people in his life. The Canadian Centre for Men and Families will catalyze a fundamental change in society's attitude towards boys and men. We will confront that which impedes men from getting help and work with the community to respond to unmet needs. We will create a better future for our sons and daughters through mutual understanding, compassion, and support." I'd like to think we've lived to that vision. And obviously it's a vision that is never ending. We'll always have more work to do, but that has been kind of our driving encapsulation of what it is that we're setting out to do. I don't know how to condense 10 years into a few short minutes, but I did want to kind of go a little bit down memory lane a little bit with some of the things that stand out for me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about sort of the milestones of the organization and some of the memories that are impactful to myself and possibly to others as well. So some of the key dates I mentioned: we were incorporated September 13th, 2010. Didn't do a whole lot for the first couple of years, to be honest. Myself and some of the other founders were really struggling with this. How are we going to build an organization that is going to not be just immediately, protested and with attempts to shut it down and rub people the wrong way? Well, we we did our best, but as I think you know from your sense of the history, we weren't successful completely at winning everybody over. That it's taken some time, and obviously even now not everybody's sort of on side, although quite a bit of progress has been made. So yeah, it took a couple years to figure out things like what the name should be, what the brand should be, what the values of the organization should be, what its goals and priorities should be. And then in the early days, 2012 and for the first several years, as Denise has indicated, we were very focused on public events. We thought that was the way to get people's interest. We did a lot of university events. I can't name all the people that spoke, but Janice Fiamengo, Paul Nathanson, Catherine Young, Warren Farrell, Rob Whitley, Dan Bilsker, Edward Kruk, James Brown, Kathy Young, Douglas Todd, Jess Haynes, Christy Blatchford, Brian Ludmer, Jean Coleman, Susan Chung, of course, Cassie Jaye, and some of the other people you've heard from tonight. That's maybe 10% of the speakers we had. We were very active with public events. In March of 2014, we got our charity status, and that obviously opened up some new opportunities. Then later that year, we opened the first CCMF in Toronto. So that's again, fall of 2014. We would later open up branches in places like Vancouver, Ottawa, and Calgary, but that's getting a bit ahead of ourselves. In 2015, 16, 17, we ran billboard ad campaigns, and that took our sort of public, persona to a new level. These ads got quite a bit of media attention. These were on suicide prevention, parental alienation, and family violence. We started to get more into that area that would occupy us increasingly to the shelters that we established in recent years. In 2015, we started what was then for a while an annual Healthy Fathers, Healthy Families campaign, which tied together Men's Health Week and Father's Day. They take place the same week in June. So we used to go out to public squares and try to engage the larger public in these discussions with some interesting experiences there. In 2015, we also started the annual golf tournaments, which would become a flagship fundraiser for the organization. And except for during the pandemic, the golf tournaments have continued ever since. We get a couple hundred people out to those every year. In 2016, we began a conference, which we would do for 3 years, called Healing Journeys, which would be focusing on men and trauma. In 2016 was, of course, the Red Pill, and we did a number of, or many events, and did a kind of a cross-country tour for the film, working with Cassie, working with local branches, and also not just CCMF, but a number of other organizations wanted to be part of this, and we worked with Cassie to kind of get the licenses out to them and to broaden the appeal of the film. In September 2017, 2017, pardon me, we opened our second CCMF. This was the one in Ottawa, and that's kind of a big deal. That is the federal capital, so we wanted to plant our flag there in Ottawa. Also in 2017, some of you may recall, we started having campus groups be banned by their student unions. The most kind of notorious example was at York University, which they now call the Toronto Metropolitan University, but at the time it was York. And we actually had a men's group, but it was being run by male and female students. And it was basically a men's health support group. That's what it was. They got together, they talked about men's health. It was banned by the school student union. And that ban has never been lifted, although we sort of gave up, a few years after that. We moved on to some other things. But the student unions have been very difficult, unfortunately, to accept that, yeah, men on campus need a support group, even though male suicide is particularly high among student university-aged males. In November 2018, we co-hosted the annual Men and Women Summit on Masculinity. In 2019, we did a project called Look Behind the Mask, which was a suicide prevention campaign. It was part research and part public education, and there were some large billboard ads that went up to educate people about male suicide and the risk factors. The idea was to get loved ones to engage to support men who were in crisis within their families. In 2019, we actually got a federal government research grant, the first that we would get, to look at the intersection of homelessness and family violence and domestic violence among the male homeless population in Toronto, and that sparked some interesting findings. And then in 2019, we did that big conference. This was just before the pandemic. Cassie was one of the speakers, as I indicated earlier. So was Senator Ann Cools and a number of VIPs. It was a really massive event, the biggest conference that we had done up to that time. But 250 people attended. Now, after the pandemic, the conferences resumed in their current form, and that's the collaboration with Susan Chung, the researcher that you heard from earlier in the night. This is a really interesting event. Many of you have been at it. They will continue into the future. It's a collaboration between the research community, Susan and her collaborators, and then frontline serving social service organizations, with CCMF being sort of the leader in that category. So bringing together academia and those organizations that are using that research to actually transform the lives of families. So that's really in a nutshell. I mean, obviously there's so much else I can't get into. The opening of the shelters, you've heard a lot about that, so I won't kind of detail that tonight. And obviously building this network of CCMF centers, which we continue to do. But just sort of lastly, I think for me, the memories that stand out are all the ones involving sort of camaraderie and working with an amazing group of people, the volunteers, the staff, the board members, the clients, etc. So just a few notable instances. The one that I remember right off the top was me and Denise doing a road trip together. This was with Janice Fiamengo, one of our early lecturers, and we had her going all over Ontario. And so we were sort of chasing after her. She was going to places like Queen's University in Kingston, University of Ottawa. In Ottawa, she did a couple of talks in Toronto. And so we did this massive field trip with a number of our then volunteers and board members, and we had hundreds of people coming out to these events. They were quite high profile. So that really stands out for me, working with Denise on that. I remember the pub nights after a lot of our events. We would all go out. This was obviously pre-pandemic days. So we were going out and just kind of socializing, and always we would have new people attending these events. And it was great to connect and understand why, so many people were moved by the kind of events that we were putting on. I remember, as a personal reflection, but the night before we had to close the deal on buying what would become the shelter in Toronto, buy the actual real estate deal, we had all these documents that we had to sign, and the lawyers were requiring that these things be like FedExed across the country, that every board member, of which we have 12, had to physically sign these documents. And I was sitting there at like 2 a.m. with Edward Sullivan, who's now the chair of the board, and frantically trying to put together the paperwork so that the deal wouldn't fall through at the last minute and we would be able to buy this house, which has now become this first of its kind shelter. So that will always stay top of mind to me. And obviously, speaking of the shelter, the epic move into that space, moving from our small office to this big, beautiful house, and having dozens of people. Now, this was during the pandemic, nevertheless coming together to paint that building and to furnish it. I can tell you it was an overwhelming experience, but it was also one that I have very fond memories of. And so just looking back at that, I realized the best memories are with the people that have really built the organization. And so I just want to end my comments by thanking all of you who have made the last 10 years so remarkable. And I think working together, we're going to continue to grow and make the next decade even better yet. And so thank you, everybody, for your attention and being a part of the celebration. And I know it's getting late. I'm sorry for that, but we'd like to just kind of open things up. It will have to be brief, but we do have some time for questions or any quick comments people have. What has the agency meant to them? Why have they become engaged and stayed engaged with this unique organization, the Center for Men and Families? And what advice do you have for the next 10 years? So open to anybody. I guess we'll ask for your hands to go up, though, so we have some controls here. But okay, Grant, go ahead.
I would just like to thank you so much for all your personal efforts. I mean, you've got such a terrific team that you've built up there, but this really couldn't have happened without you. I really feel that down deep, that your leadership and you're bringing all these people together and inviting them in to participate in this thing is just an amazing accomplishment.
Thanks,
so thank you, Justin.
I appreciate that.
Everybody,
let's make this a round of applause for the whole team, because guys, you hear a lot from me, and I really appreciate your remarks, Grant, and others as well. But there is a major team behind us, and my biggest accomplishment is really helping to make that team happen and bringing these people together, and they deserve all the credit in the world. So we'll share that, but appreciate the sentiment. Okay, who else would like to speak?
I'll say a few words if I could, again, at the expense of blabbing too much, Justin.
Go for
Yeah,
it.
go ahead. Okay, for those of you who don't know me, and probably most of you don't know me, I'm on the operations committee at the Ottawa office, and I'm a proud father of an amazing daughter, actually, who's a competitive bodybuilder and fitness guru. So I'm definitely not an angry men's rights activist. What I am, though, is very proud to be part of this organization because I do believe that, as we all know, there's a real bias in the family law justice system in Canada, and there's almost a social reflex that's going on in Canada where men are just held up for ridicule as bad news. And I really have become very sensitized to that over the last while. I'm very excited, though, to say that in Ottawa, we are, after some personnel challenges, as is common with social agencies, I'm quite excited that we now have a woman that we have recruited. I have played a big role in recruiting her, actually, to become the volunteer executive director. Her name is Carla Devlin, and she may be reaching out to you, and you might have even talked to her now. She's very experienced social worker in Ottawa with a ton of degrees in social work, and seems very engaged and determined to make the Ottawa office very relevant to the community and do more in-person programs. And I'm very excited to be supporting her. We're working on various promotional videos with her and what have you. So that's the exciting news about Ottawa. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
That is exciting, Simon. Thank you for that. Who would like to go next? Bill, please. Oh, sorry, that's a thumbs up. Okay, I mistook it for a hand. Anybody else? Really, you've been so patient for 2 hours. You folks have nothing to say. Okay, I'm surprised. I see Brad, and then we'll go to Bob. Go ahead, Brad.
Okay, I'll be really quick. My involvement with Canadian Center for Men and Family started in 2018, so I've been facilitating a weekly peer support group. I just want to say it's been so rewarding to watch how quickly services have grown over the past few years. And I did want to mention there's a number of people from the group. Our Monday night group are here tonight, and a couple of co-facilitators here as well. I just want to say I get regular feedback from people in our group just about the impact of all the services provided by CCMF. And we are impacting lives in a significant way. I know a couple times it's been mentioned tonight about the high rates of male suicide. I've heard feedback a number of times from people just saying their involvement in some of our groups and services is what has kept them alive. So it's just profoundly impactful for me to be involved with that as well. So I just want to thank everyone for your support and what you do and for being here tonight. And thank you, Cassie. It was great to listen to you speak again. That's it for me. Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, Brad. Okay, Bob's up next.
Yeah, I'll be brief as well. I just want to say for a minute, Justin, I don't know if you recall, we met for coffee a number of years ago when you first came out here to Vancouver, and I was really impressed with you at that time and the work that you're doing. And I have been following you. I apologize, I haven't been probably as active with you guys as I could have been, but I do get your emails and I follow closely what you're doing. And thank you, thank you, thank you. This is so much needed. As you know, I've been working with men and men's groups around North America for over 35 years now. And it was a special treat to see Cassie here tonight. I remember when her documentary first came out, and it had a huge impact on me. I shared it with a lot of people, and I'll be sharing it again. I'll be watching it again. And just thanks a lot. This is so needed for men around the world. I'm going to say especially here in North America, but worldwide. So thank you, Justin. My hat's off to you and all the work you've been doing.
Thanks for
cheers,
that, Paul.
and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. We'll go to Kyle next. And I think, Kyle, you're out of Saskatchewan. It's great to see such representation across this beautiful country. Kyle, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like I said, I'm from Saskatchewan. And I'd just like to say the CCMF to me, what the organization means to me is we get a chance, a fighting chance to push back against some serious social collapse here because the relationship between men and women heavily disrupted right now. And if we lose that, yeah, our civilization is done for. And I think the CCMF is going to be one of our best chances to repair that relationship and actually move forward in a positive direction. So I just want to say thank you for being that force.
I appreciate the existential importance that you're laying on our feet in a way, but points well taken.
At the risk of sounding overly dramatic, I know.
You wouldn't want that. Who'd like to go next? Okay. No hands? All right.
No.
Appreciate
Hello, everyone. I welcome you all. And I just want to say something. Like, I was really surprised to know, like, and I think the last time I attended a session or a meeting with you guys was I think 2 years ago. And when I received the email, I was really surprised on we become like an official organization with a lot of tools and equipment and expanding all over. When just 2 years ago, it was only in British Columbia and here in Toronto. And I was really surprised. So I want to thank you, Justin, and all the team who supported this organization to grow and expand. You have done great work. I was not part of it, but I still would love to thank you all. And I wanted to contribute. So that's what I wanted to say, that I'm willing to contribute I'm based here in Toronto. And as the gentleman mentioned, it means a lot for me. This organization means a lot for me. And yeah, I have all of what you've mentioned, like I have been suicidal, depressed, and I was all of that. So thank you again for this beautiful organization, and thank you for the time that you give me.
Thank you, Aham, and we're glad that we could be there to support you. Nelson, sorry, I missed your hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hello. You hear me okay? Okay. I've been meaning to get onto this this sofa enterprise there, just so I can clear my head out of what I've been through. But if you can get some penalties for making false accusations, that would, be equivalent to what the guy would have gotten if it's proven false. Well, that might stop a lot of it. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents worth. I want to thank you for doing what you're doing, and I got some tales to tell, but you don't want to see a grown man cry. I've got 2.5 alienated children. One's sort of, he's alienated, and he's having a hard time. It's hard to see it in your own children when they're like this. As a young man, he's not a young man now, he's 40 years old. He needs some repair work on himself too. Anyway, so if I can get into the sofa team one of these days, that'd be great for me.
Thank you, Nelson. We'll certainly facilitate that. Please reach out to us in the coming days. Just on false allegations, I hadn't mentioned this, but we've done a sort of first of its kind national survey, which we commissioned and was done by the Nanos research firm on our behalf. And we're going to be releasing those findings in the early new year. So this looked at, through a population survey, how prevalent false allegations are in Canada and what their consequences are. So a bit of a teaser for that to come in the next couple of weeks. we are getting a little bit late, so if there are any, quick last comments, otherwise we're gonna sadly have to close the event.
I do. I kindly request to be added, my email to be added to the weekly meetings so I can attend. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Just as kind of a last word on that, at least, please, if there are any requests for support, if it's an emergency situation or you just want to register for programs, go to the website. That really is the fastest way, menandfamilies.org, and then services right at the top. And there's a registration online. You can always email or call, but that's the fastest way to get that emergency support. Okay, we're going to give the last comment or question to Andreas. I see he just put his hand up. Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool. Well, thank you. Kudos to the organization, and the reveal was a fun documentary to watch. And I think, and I hope that the organization in the future, as it's doing right now, is going to take us beyond the even the red pill, a blue pill, I guess, dichotomy. Sometimes I wonder whether the red pill is more like a placebo effect of some sort. And I think it's important to get out of this dichotomy. And I think the way the organization is directing, I think is the right way to go and to focus on families as the base of our society. And one more thing, Brad is there, is the facilitator of the Monday group. And I have to say, of course, there is a whole organization behind, but people like Brad are like the face of the organization for some of us. And I really appreciate the work that Brad has been doing since he started. I joined, I guess, 2000, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. And even though, but yeah, my personal thing is relevant right now. But just to say that the work of volunteers like Brad is highly valuable, and it's very important to keep that consistency on a very on an ongoing basis every week, except in some the statutory holidays. Brad is there, and it's an incredible resource for the people who joined the call on Monday. So I just wanted to say, to acknowledge that as well. And thank you again for your work and for many, many more decades of success.
Well, thank you, Andreas. Those are great themes, I think, to wrap up on, actually, is just reminding us all of the people that power the organization. And it's the frontline intake agents, and it's the frontline, social service facilitators like Brad and many others you were referring to, and it's the board, and it's the administrative people as well. So again, I just want to thank that amazing team. It's really a privilege to work with all of you and to serve the community and the clients that we do. And again, if you do need any assistance over the holidays, we're going to be, as I said, ramping up the men's peer support groups and some of the other essential services. You can go to the website, menandfamilies.org, again, services to register, or contact us to get involved in those. And I want to thank all of you, and I want to kind of leave you with kind of a positive message. We're in a very different place than we were 10 years ago. I think you've gotten that sense from some of the presentations. We really did have to overcome a lot of opposition to get where we are, and that is partly another and final, I promise you, fundraising appeal, because this work isn't easy and it does require some funding to carry us forward. And so go to those links that I've been sharing and make your year-end donation. And if you do it before the stroke of midnight tonight, it's 4 times, and up to the end of the year, as I said, it will be doubled. So you do have a bit of time as far as that goes. But we are getting some media attention, and Denise, thank you for putting in the National Post link. There was also CBC, CTV, and global coverage focused on the Alberta shelter, Alberta housing opening that happened just a few weeks ago. That is very different, and it's kind of a nice symbolic achievement compared to the media. I remember when we opened, there were hit pieces, there were pieces really ad hominem attacks. I mean, it was outrageous that this stuff got published in Toronto Star, like major publications. We don't see those anymore. We're now seeing that kind of positive transformation. I'm not saying it's always going to be easy or it's always going to be positive going forward. Of course not. But it is a night and day change as to where we were a decade ago. And that's, again, because of all of you. So lastly, just a final thank you from all of us that are part of the leadership team at CCMF, to all of you who make this work such a pleasure and are so involved in being impactful in our communities. Thank you again. Good night, everybody. And we'll see you in the new year. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.